Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into a big promise in Nigeria that's, well, kinda breaking. We're talking about a so-called cheap fuel solution that just got a whole lot more expensive.
So, let's get right into it. We're talking about compressed natural gas, or CNG. You might have heard about it. It was pitched as this incredible savior from Nigeria's insane petrol prices. But for the thousands and thousands of drivers who actually went out and made the switch, well, that promise is looking pretty shaky right now.
All right, so let's start with the big news. The thing that really caught everyone off guard. We're talking about a massive price hike that basically just appeared out of nowhere.
For a while there, things were looking great. Drivers were filling up their tanks for about 230 naira per standard cubic meter. And you know, a standard cubic meter, or SCM, is just how they measure this gas, kind of like how we use liters for petrol. It was exactly the affordable alternative people were hoping for.
And then bam, almost overnight, that price, it nearly doubled. Retailers just announced a new maximum price of 450 naira. You can imagine the shockwave that sent through the community of people who were the first to jump on this.
But here's where it gets interesting. This new price isn't a flat rate for everybody. Nope. The biggest hit is on the trucks. You know, the ones hauling goods around the country. They're paying the full 450 naira. Cars and commercial buses, they get a bit of a break, but not much, at 380 naira.
So, you got to be asking yourself, how did we even get to this point? To really get why people are so frustrated by this price hike, we need to rewind the clock a bit. Back to 2023, to the moment that really changed everything for drivers in Nigeria.
Remember when the government removed that huge petrol subsidy? Well, that's when things went wild. Pump prices just skyrocketed, jumping from about 175 naira a liter to almost 900. It was a massive shock. So to try and cushion that blow, the government went all in on this big initiative, pushing CNG as this amazing, affordable, and clean alternative.
And you know what? People bought into it, big time. In just one single year, the number of vehicles running on CNG absolutely exploded. We're talking from less than 4,000 to almost 100,000. Conversion centers started popping up all over the place. The refueling network started to expand. I mean, it created over 10,000 jobs. It really felt like it was working.
But like with any big change, the reality on the ground for the actual drivers, well, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. There have been some incredible benefits, but also some really serious frustrations.
Take a ride-hailing driver named Adeyemi Paul, for instance. He points out a huge problem. I mean, this guy spent up to 1.5 million naira to get his car converted, only to find himself stuck in these massive queues. Some of them were 1.5 kilometers long. There just weren't enough stations. It's a total logistical nightmare.
But here's the flip side, and it's a big one. The savings were just undeniable. That's why people were willing to put up with all that hassle. Listen to this. Another driver, Samuel Uderike, said he was cutting his daily fuel costs from as much as 30,000 naira on petrol all the way down to just 3,500 on CNG. That is a massive difference. And that's why this sudden price hike feels like such a betrayal to so many.
And hey, it wasn't just the drivers who were winning. Passengers felt it in their pockets too. You could get a bus trip from, say, Lagos to Warri for 30% less if it was a CNG bus. Now, there was a catch, of course. You'd probably have to take a 30-minute detour in Benin just to refuel, which, really shines a light on those infrastructure problems.
So all of this begs the obvious question, right? Why on earth would you raise the price of something that was so clearly working for so many people? Well, the answer really gets to the core of the problem here. It's this fundamental tug of war between keeping fuel affordable right now and building a market that can actually survive in the long run.
Okay, so the first piece of this puzzle is just sheer confusion. A lot of it coming from official sources, believe it or not. The big question is CNG actually subsidized or isn't it? Nobody seems to have a straight answer, which makes it impossible for people to know what to expect.
I mean, look at this. The messaging has been all over the place. You've got one official from the CNG initiative telling the press, yes, commercial vehicles are getting a subsidy. And then you get an official statement from the very same group saying the exact opposite. They're saying, nope, the government doesn't subsidize CNG, it's all up to private companies. So which one is it? It's no wonder everybody's confused.
Okay, but here's the other side of the coin. Industry experts, guys like Jai Pratt, are basically saying this price hike is a necessary evil. It's about long-term survival.
Think about it. For the network to actually grow, for more stations to get built, private companies have to be able to make a profit. The thinking is that a price that's commercially viable will pull in the investment needed to build all those stations and, ironically, make the fuel more available for everyone down the line.
But, okay, even with this painful price hike, we have to put the numbers into perspective. Let's say you're taking a 100-kilometer trip. Even at the new, higher price, CNG will still cost you less than half of what you'd pay for petrol. And compared to diesel, it's just a tiny fraction of the cost. So, yeah, the savings are still absolutely dramatic.
So, look, despite all these growing pains, this isn't a lost cause, not at all. There is a clear path forward here, a way to make this work. And the good news is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's actually a really good model of success we can look to in another country.
A lot of independent researchers are pointing to India. Why? Because they've built a massive, and I mean massive, and reliable CNG network. But they took a totally different approach. See, right now, Nigeria is mostly trucking gas from big mother stations to smaller daughter stations. It's inefficient, it's risky. India, on the other hand, they went all in on building a network of stations fed directly by pipelines.
And their success really boils down to a clear, simple formula. First, they have a strong regulator that sets the rules of the game. Second, private companies get licenses, but they come with strict targets for building new stations that are actually enforced. And maybe most importantly, they prioritize that stable pipeline infrastructure over the shaky system of trucking gas around. That's the key to reliability and stable prices.
And that brings us back to the ultimate question for Nigeria's energy future, doesn't it? Is it possible to have both? To build a system that's profitable enough for investors to keep building it out, but also cheap enough to give real, tangible relief to everyday citizens. India's model suggests it's possible, but it requires a clear, deliberate strategy. That's all for this edition of The Explainer.